Mall Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Sometimes on Facebook, I'll notice that somebody posted some sad news. If somebody died or somebody's not doing well. And then so many people will respond to that posting, and then that person will say, I'm overwhelmed. I didn't know so many people cared for me. I never knew so many people even knew about me. And I wonder if that's not just the way we all are. We just feel like maybe, a few people know you, but not everybody. And maybe a few people respect you or a few people admire you, but not a whole lot of people. Maybe we need to know. Maybe we need to know the truth. Maybe there's a lot of people who really care for us and admire us and respect us. I hope so. Anyway, Tina Yeager is in the studio. She's written a book called Beautiful Warrior, Finding Victory Over the Lies Formed Against You, and she uses biblical references to support some of the things she says, and I absolutely think this is so important. And you know what? Even more for you ladies, I don't know why. I mean, us guys, we have, self-esteem problems too, but for some reason you got a little bit more. It's a little bit harder for you. Tina Yeager, it says here you're a latte junkie. Is that right?
Yes.
Latte.
I love my coffee.
Is that the thing I get, Robin? I'd like this.
Yes,
Robin gets me
do.
something.
Yes, you do.
Oh, I love that thing.
Get
She
a
gets it to me
latte.
on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Not sure why. You're a life coach. You live in Ocala. All right. You moved here in December, you just told me.
did.
And you champion the message of Christ-centered esteem. Oh, my gosh. You're on my side already. I'm on your side, I should say. You're a licensed counselor. You serve with Word Weavers International. Okay. Well, so much to find out about. Tina, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Where did you move from?
I moved from the Tampa area, Brandon, Valrico, a little bit
Okay.
east of Tampa.
How did you end up in Ocala?
My husband works for General RV, the brand new, enormous
Oh my
dealership
gosh.
right on I-75. Yes.
Alrighty.
I want an RV.
Oh, yes, I've seen you guys have been traveling.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, but not in an RV. Do you ride around in an RV?
I don't. I prefer to have other people clean up after me when I go on vacation. So I'm not an RV person. I'm a
So far, that's
hotel
me.
person.
Oh, really? What about your husband? Does he like hotels or RVs?
He's kind of on the fence. He sells them, so he sees the value in it. So
Did you grow up in Tampa?
no, I actually grew up in Lakeland.
Okay,
which
okay.
was kind of a small town and kind of spread out and grew. So
One of the things that we've learned, we've done this radio show for gone on 17 years now. One of the things we've learned is we have a lot of talented people out there, and you are among them. And it is amazing that if you don't, and I'm so glad we do this as a local show, because then the listeners get to hear, oh my God, we have guests. The last guest was somewhere, I don't know where he was, but he was somewhere out there. But
Well, he was with the DEA,
Oh, that's right. He was in Arizona. But,
yeah.
but the idea that we have people right in their own backyard that write some marvelous books. So tell me about your book. Did you go through a self-esteem time when you didn't believe in yourself, or you didn't think other people believed in you?
absolutely. I struggled with self-esteem ever since I was very young. I even had an eating disorder for 8 years. And
I have had one for 64 years.
Bulimia or the other way?
it was anorexic type eating
mine's
disorder.
the other way, yeah.
So,
Mine's the other-
yeah.
That's why you brought me all those cookies.
Yes,
They're
I brought you all
healthy.
these wonderful little treats.
So I'm sorry.
They're healthy.
I distracted you. So you did. So your self-esteem led to the eating disorders?
It did. It did. I thought if I was just thin enough, maybe people would allow me to be around them. So
Oh my.
Why?
I wanted
Where
so
does that come
badly
from?
to be accepted. So
That's what I think Celine Dion's going through right now. She doesn't want to admit it, but it looks like it. It's horribly reminding me of Karen Carpenter, what she went through.
absolutely. And Princess Diana suffered from an eating
she
disorder
really?
as
Exactly.
well. That's part of what I looked into in my book. We're all princesses, but we suffer in silence. And we need to know about that.
good
Like
line.
you're saying, being authentic with each other about our struggles helps us be able to encourage one another toward healing and truth and fulfilling our potential.
But there's also a tinge of embarrassment, though, and I think that's why people are inward and don't like to express themselves.
Yeah, we're constantly fighting a culture of shame. And that's around us all the time. And yet, if we were to just reach past those lies, we can come to that truth and realize that we're connected. We all struggle in similar ways, and we're here to support one another to get through those struggles and fulfill our potential.
Very smart. So are you struggling with self-esteem right now?
I am in a place of healing where I'm so much more confident that I'm able to lift other people up. I wouldn't say I never struggle with self-condemnation. I think everybody does to some degree. That would be inauthentic and absolutely untrue if I said I never, ever had an issue where I doubted myself. But I'm at a place where I am confident enough to help other women get to the other side of those deep, deep, dark pit struggles.
And that's the part where, I'm not a religious, like I can't quote the Bible, but I believe in God and I believe in Jesus. And I think that's the part where you just said, where you are he's living through you. Jesus, God is living through you when you help other people.
Absolutely.
Does it feel like that?
Yes. And he's the one who does all the heavy lifting. He does the best work.
I like that.
I show up and he does the best work. So I trust him to do the things that are meant to be done in the healing of other people. I'm not responsible for that, but I'm responsible for showing up and doing my part of it.
And that's one of the things you encourage others in your book, because you also have parts in your book where the reader can, use this wholeheartedly, and they can write things of themselves personally, and nobody ever has to read it but themselves.
Yes, that's true. You can share it as a group, you can do it as a group study, or you can simply answer those questions on your own and make it a personal journey. Either way, it still can have an opportunity for healing. There's practical tips and steps that you can apply to your life in there.
And that's very hard for a person to be honest with themselves. They tend to find fault in others, but when it comes to themselves, they don't want to see it.
We should be our own best friends, and yet we're our own worst enemies most of the time. We're meaner to ourselves than we are to anybody else.
It's probably true, yeah. So is the book new?
It is. It releases today.
Today's the release date.
Today is the day.
Same day as my son's birthday. So your book and my son share a birthday.
Yay.
And so are you doing book signings?
I am. I have an event at the Pink Hanger Boutique downtown on Wednesday, and I have another event coming up on the 27th in Dunellen at Sweetie's Tea Room and Cafe.
Oh, that sounds
nice.
Sweetie's Tea Room.
Yes, it's a lovely little tea room.
Are you going to bring them cookies?
Grumpy's.
You should bring them
Well, I think they have their own cookies at the tea room. They probably have better cookies that I could bring. So.
And what time is your event at the Pink Hanger?
5 to 7 p.m. this Wednesday.
And at the Sweetie's Tea Room?
That one starts at 11, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's
Excellent.
on a Saturday.
Okay.
So are there things in our culture that how do I ask this? Are there things in our culture that make us do this to one another? As far as, what is it about? Like in sports, the whole idea of sports is to teach us to be more sportsmanlike, which is to say, if you fall down and hurt yourself and you're on the other team, I help you up. I don't say, good for you, you're down, right?
I hope not.
Yeah, we're not supposed to do that, but yet that's what we do. Listen to the politicians. It's unbelievable how they call each other idiots and how they say they're stupid. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what kind of an example is that for the rest of especially the young people?
And we're also looking at one another through the lens of the perfected social media faces that we present on Pinterest and Facebook. And there's a lot of shaming among teenagers and young people that goes on, and cyberbullying. It's so much easier to be unkind through a screen, and we're seeing people hide behind screens more than ever.
Oh yeah,
less personal than we used to be.
And you know what? Just because I'm 64 doesn't mean I'm immune to it. We do these every day, these little interviews, and they all go up on YouTube, and you would be surprised how many people say something nasty about us.
Yeah.
Like they'll say, oh my gosh, they don't have a clue. Well, that's right. Well, we don't.
That's why we ask questions.
That's why we're asking questions. we had two guys on. They were calling in, and apparently they were really famous with the young kids, and we never knew who they were.
In England, yeah.
In England, yeah. And so I was asking them stuff like, are you married? And I guess they're gay, so I didn't know. How was I supposed to know that? And the kids were, oh my gosh, this guy is making me cringe. And I'm thinking, how was I? But to our defense, the two guys commented back, said, no, they were nice to us. They were just, old.
Do you think that some of that shaming is in part because it just seems now like this generation, I know it was going on in generations before, but it's so much more prevalent now where the parents are saying me, and then the grandparents are raising the grandchildren, and the grandchildren are hurting, so they have no other way to compensate for this.
People do the worst things to one another through fear and insecurity. So when you see that unkindness happening, it's usually from a place of tremendous insecurity that's covered up with inflating your ego by putting other people down. I'm not excusing it, but it is usually part of the root cause.
How do you help that person? I mean, how do you help that person see themselves in something and become better?
Usually it's in reaching out and doing things that develop compassion that helps us develop compassion. So getting people to serve one another helps us get outside of our me-centeredness, and learning our potential and our true worth is in helping others. Our greatest value comes from what we can provide to the world, not what we take from it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we have a saying, when your joy comes from giving, you can never be disappointed. Because you're so often disappointed when you're expecting something. But when you're giving, you're in control if you're giving.
Yes.
You can do whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe innocent ways that I think we do this to each other is by not including somebody. Like, let's say we're going to put together a group, we're going to sing Christmas carols, and I don't invite you. You go, oh, how come? I wonder what, and maybe it was innocent. Maybe we didn't mean to not invite you, but that happens, right? We do that a lot. Somebody was thanking a group of people on Facebook, and I was included in the group that was thanked. It was nice, but then I thought, oh my gosh, look who's not there. Look at all the people who are not there. We might do that. Do you think that's something we just got to be cautious of?
I think we could be more careful of who we include and invite. And you have to be intentional about being compassionate and other-centered. Our default setting is to be self-centered. So if we begin to become more intentional about seeking that daily, how can I be a servant? How can I love other people better today? Then we begin to feel empowered.
So how did you get the courage to look within yourself and write this book?
I noticed as a licensed mental health counselor, every woman that came into my office struggled with some form of self-esteem issues or a lack of purpose. And I knew that I had struggled with it too. And I couldn't simply see enough women in person to help make this issue get the results that it needed. I wanted a vehicle that would reach farther than I could in person, either in speaking events or from a counseling office. So I needed a book to reach further. And I almost gave up on it, but I knew that the message was needed by so many women struggling in silence out there that I kept going.
Why is there a sexual divide or gender divide? Why is it women? Not everybody.
Well, everybody. I think men suffer differently from women, and because I'm a woman, I chose to write this book on self-esteem for women. Men get a totally different issue with self-esteem because I think they're expected to put on even more of a strong front and pretend they don't suffer with self-esteem issues. So that's an even more difficult and complicated issue sometimes than what women struggle with. But women are more likely to open up to one another, and men do not. So there is a completely different set of problems related to men's self-esteem. I would never say that men don't struggle with it.
I think women, the women who are close to the men, see them completely who they are and let them know that. So you can be a tough guy and then cry when the dog dies, and you're okay around your wife, for example. Yeah. But I also think men don't do enough to support their wives. I'm not saying everybody, but I think a lot of times they'll do something like, oh my God, here's your mother's, chili, or something like that. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, she just worked all day on this chili, and you just, in one sweeping statement, made her feel like it was inadequate. I think we, as men, sometimes contribute to that problem.
Not having taken the time to learn how to develop that compassionate side, because men are sometimes trained not to show compassion.
Well, plus, I think we think it's funny. Because that's what we do with each other.
Yes.
You know, us guys do to guys that very thing I just described. But if I were to do that to Robin, it would break her heart. I would never do that to Robin. Now, to Galen in the morning, I might do some.
Yeah,
but I really think that's part of the problem is we think that the way we treat other guys works with women too, and it doesn't. It's hurtful.
Yes, and I think sometimes men hurt each other's feelings when they don't say so.
And sometimes jealousy could be at the root of that, because women, in my opinion, have no problem having one face to that person and then stabbing him in the back to somebody else. How do you deter that from happening?
Gossip is a terrible issue among women. The slander that we do to each other is unspeakable. And women really are stronger when we band together and support one another. And yet sometimes women have that competition mindset that says, from that position of insecurity, I have to put other women down in order to feel good about myself. And it isn't true. It doesn't work. It does not help us feel better about ourselves or get stronger. It actually weakens us because it's excluding us from that power that we would get in that solidarity with other sisters.
And that's something that you were able to rise above, because you must have had that feeling to become anorexic, that you weren't worthy and every other woman was prettier than you or more successful than you.
I had always felt that other people had value that I didn't. Like I was a pauper looking inside of a Tiffany's window. All these people were so valuable. I wish I could be part of that. I wish I could belong to that. And yet I didn't feel like I did. And when I began as a counselor to see the beauty in every individual, I realized how much every individual has to offer. And none of us realize how powerful our stories, our lives, our potential, our unique gifts are.
I love your message. I love your message.
You're a wonderful wordsmith, too, by the way.
The book is called Beautiful Warrior. Let me put the cover on the streaming thing we're doing right there. Beautiful cover, too, by the way. Tina Yeager is our guest, and she's the author of this book, Finding Victory Over the Lies Formed Against You. And the book uses a lot of scripture to support some of the things you're talking about. Let's talk about the book specifically. Give us some examples of some things in the book.
Well, with regard to scripture, I take 1 Corinthians 13, which is known as the love chapter. A lot of times people use that in a wedding to talk about how to love your spouse. I look at it from the perspective of how can you love yourself better? Are you patient with yourself? Are you kind with yourself? Are you keeping a record of wrongs with yourself? If you look at those same principles that you would apply to your relationships with other people that are close to you, and instead begin to treat yourself, or as well begin to treat yourself that way, that you would honor and respect and love yourself, then you can begin to love other people better.
That's pretty profound.
So one of the things we're taught in society is not to be selfish, and I don't think doing what you just described is being selfish, but a 17-year-old might think that. I don't know. When we're 17, though, we're very self-centered, I think, right?
And we're still in that part of individuating. So in teenage years, just like in toddler years, you're learning how to become an independent person from your parents. So part of that is introspective. You're looking at who you are, where you belong, what your potential is, and what you can do. Loving and accepting yourself can be a very powerful way to begin to fulfill who you really are. And when you know that, you can begin to serve and bless other people from a position of strength and security. If you hold on to that and you become selfish, that is not a position of security. That's still a position of insecurity. Most people who are embracing their potential are not going to remain insecure, because their potential is in giving.
And that's another thing you bring up in your book is the worthiness of people, like you had expressed earlier. And I think people can't hear it enough that they are valuable.
True. And there are so many things going on that are deep, deep wounds and traumas with people. Childhood abuse, domestic violence that can drive that message of insecurity and shame even deeper. But those stories can often become the most powerful ones to inspire other people.
Are there some in the Bible, some stories or some individuals who clearly had a self-esteem issue?
If you look at the woman at the well that Jesus met, the woman that was a Samaritan woman. She had to come to the well in the middle of the day because she was an outcast. Nobody goes to the well in the middle of the day because it's hot. You go in the beginning of the day in the morning, but she knew all the other women would be there. And she was thought of badly by the other women because in the culture of that time, if you'd been married more than once, or if you weren't married, you were looked down upon by the other women in society. But when Jesus came through, instead of avoiding Samaria, he chose to go through. And he also sent the other disciples away. I think he sent them away because he knew he was there to meet this woman. And he knew that she had issues with men. And he knew that having too many men around would make her unable to talk to him. So he sent them off into the town. And when she came to the well at the middle of the day, he was there waiting for her. And he knew her story. He knew that she'd been married 5 times. He knew that the man that she was living with was not her husband. And she had all of these issues. Her resentment, her bitterness, her self-defensiveness came through in her discussion with him. And yet, he made her the evangelist to the nation. This woman no one would have expected. That was the outcast of society that had this horrible backstory, probably terribly treated. I mean, you could speculate she may have suffered from domestic violence or abuse of some kind in her backstory with 5 husbands kicking her out. So she's the one that goes and tells the whole nation of Samaria about Jesus. So he lifts her up from a place of being an outcast to being a person of significance and honor. And he chose her. He knew he was going to meet her in that moment.
Have you ever wanted to be a pastor or the head of a church or something?
Well, I asked God about that when I was a teenager, and he said, no. I have other things for you.
Oh, really?
To do. Yeah.
Do you know, my mom's church had a lady pastor, and when she first came on board, some of the people left for no other reason. And I thought, oh my gosh, and to make somebody feel bad, I mean, there's a good thing. She's coming in, she's very qualified, and turned out she was a wonderful teacher. But my mom stayed there. My mom wanted to support her, but a lot of the people just left simply because they didn't want a lady being in charge of the church.
I do support my friends who are women in ministry. I do believe that God calls women like he called Deborah, and he called this woman to be an evangelist. I think he still calls women today. He has no bias against any gender. But that isn't my specific calling. Mine is to write and speak and life coach.
Yeah, I can see that for you. I can see like a TEDx thing or something for you. Have you done that? Or
I'm looking forward to an opportunity to do that.
You'd be great at that.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Sometimes those things are really uplifting and make you think a little bit differently, you know. And if anything, if you can show, there's 2 people you're talking to in the book. You're talking to the woman who's not feeling appreciated and who has less self-esteem. But you're also talking to the guys who really don't want to innocently. I mean, if you're doing it intentionally, that's different. That's a mean person. But I mean, if you're doing it because you think it's funny or something, your book is going to help those guys realize, don't do that anymore. You're going to hurt your sister or your wife or your mother even, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, when you're meeting with someone and she's of the younger generation, like 16 or 17, how do you instill in her that if something is not going right in her life, that she does need to open up to somebody else so they can fix the problem, whether she's being abused by someone emotionally or physically?
Find somebody you can trust. And keep talking until you find somebody you can trust. There are people that those who've been abused would turn them away or tell them to hide it or tell them not to talk about it or won't really help. So sometimes abuse victims will try to get help and they don't get help from the first person that they seek help from, so they give up. But I would encourage that young woman not to give up and to keep asking until she finds that true helper that's going to be an advocate for her to get her out of that situation.
That's excellent words of wisdom.
And the same thing goes, we kind of have that message for our authors, you know, especially if they are new, and this might apply to you. Don't ever give up. You've got something really wonderful. A lot of people will be benefiting from your words. And it's a weird thing, isn't it, that the words are on paper and they sit there and they could be on a bookshelf, but as soon as they open them, somebody opens it, becomes alive, right? And Is it okay I give this one away?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so if I have a listener who would like a copy of Beautiful Warrior, call me right now, and I will take a call at random, and it'll be waiting here for you at the radio station, and Tina can even sign it for you, but I can only take one, okay? So the rest of us have to go buy it. It goes on sale today?
Yes.
Today, let's see, I found it on Amazon, and you're going to be showing up at a couple different places. How do I do this? Oh, here it is. On Amazon, do you have a website dedicated to the book?
I have my website, which has a page where they can click and find the book on my publisher's website. My website is tinayeager.com. Pretty easy to find.
And you're going to be, to reiterate, at the Pink Hangar this Wednesday.
Yes, from 5 to 7 p.m.
And then on July 27th, you're going to be in Dunellen.
Yes, at Sweetie's Tea Room and Cafe.
What's
at
next?
11 a.m.
And what's next for you?
I have some conferences coming up in August. I plan to be at the American Association of Christian Counselors and at Catalyst Atlanta in October. So I have some things coming up with that. And I'm looking for other opportunities to speak, either locally or across the country. Always available.
Well, consider this the first of many visits with us. Don't forget us. Let us help you if you're promoting something and you want to talk about maybe another book or another book signing, or maybe you run into somebody and the two of you have a similar message and you'd like to come back in with that person. Just call Robin. She'll set it up for you, okay?
Great. I have Audra Coates locally. She and I are going to be setting up some women's retreats and conferences here in Ocala. We just haven't nailed down a date yet. So that will be available for listeners if they are interested.
I wish I could give you a list of all of the local authors that would love to meet you. Oh. We have so many of them. You know who comes to mind? Connie Mann. Do you know Connie?
I don't.
By chance, she's a teacher at Silver Springs at the museum.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And she's a captain. She captains the boat. And she writes these books, and she's amazing, and you're amazing, and I think the two of you would just hit it off.
That would be great.
Thank you for coming in here, Tina.
Thanks. One more thing I did think about. I have a podcast that I just launched called Flourishment, and it's flourish-meant. Flourish as you were meant to. So.
Well, I'm going to be listening. I'm a big fan of podcasts. I listen to them in my car on my way in and my way home.
Great. Yeah. It's brand new, so people can get in on at the beginning.
Well, good for you. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us. All right, we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.